The gate of the correctional facility clanged shut behind me, and for a moment I just stood there, frozen. 2 years of my life had been traded for one decision. One night when I said yes to the man I thought I loved. The air felt different, heavy with the smell of wet earth and blooming spring trees. Freedom had a scent, and it hit me so hard my knees almost buckled. I gripped the strap of my worn-out duffel bag like it could keep me upright. Madeline. A familiar voice broke through my daze. Megan Foster waved from her old silver Subaru, parked crookedly near the curb. She looked the same as when I last saw her, fiery curls escaping a loose ponytail, eyes that never learned how to lie. She rushed over, pulling me into a hug so tight it hurt. "You're free, finally," she whispered, like saying it out loud might break the spell. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Yeah, I'm free. But freedom wasn't what I imagined when I signed those papers and took that sentence. It wasn't joy, not really. It was heavy, because everything I lost in there I couldn't get back. The baby I carried for 7 weeks before stress and grief ripped it away from me. My law career gone. My name tainted. "Come on," Megan said, brushing my hair back from my face. "I brought clothes. You can change in the car. We'll get you home, showered, fed." No, my voice cracked, sharp enough to make her stop. "I'm not going home, not yet." She frowned, already knowing what I was about to say. "Madeline, you don't have to." "I do." I stared past her to the road stretching out of the parking lot, to a world that had kept spinning while I sat behind bars. "I need to see him, Megan. I need to see Ethan." Her jaw tightened. Megan had never liked Ethan Clark, even before the accident. "You've been gone for 2 years, Maddie. People change." "So have I." I shoved the bag into the car and slid into the passenger seat. "Please, Megan, just take me there." We drove in silence, the hum of the engine filling the space between us. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass, watching the world blur by. Kids chasing a basketball in the street, a couple walking hand in hand, the life I once imagined for myself before one midnight phone call shattered it all. Ethan had been frantic that night, his voice trembling as he admitted he'd hit someone on the highway. A woman. He was drunk. There was a little girl crying on the side of the road. And I, a woman in love and blinded by loyalty, had told him to leave everything to me. I was a law graduate, almost sworn in. I thought I could handle it, fix it, minimize the damage. Instead, I confessed to something I hadn't done, believing the judge would be lenient. I believed in him. I believed in us. The judge hadn't been lenient. The prosecutors had been relentless. Ethan had been silent. I'd spent 2 years replaying that night. 2 years surviving the cold gray walls and the whispers of other women who saw right through me. And through it all, I'd kept one hope alive, Ethan. That he would wait. That we'd start over when I got out. That somehow this sacrifice would mean something. Megan pulled up outside his apartment complex and killed the engine. "You don't have to do this today," she said softly. "You could shower first, sleep first, think first." I shook my head, already reaching for the door handle. "I've been thinking for 2 years. I need to see him." The stairs felt longer than they should have, my heart pounding with every step. I still had his key. Megan had brought it to me during one of her visits. It slid into the lock smoothly, and the door opened with a familiar creak I'd missed so much. Inside, soft music played, and then I froze. Voices. Ethan's voice. A woman's voice. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I just stood there in the doorway, the duffel bag slipping from my shoulder, my entire body locked in place as their conversation drifted into my ears. "She gets out today?" The woman's voice was sharp, almost anxious. "Yeah," Ethan replied. I could hear the sound of ice clinking in a glass. Megan called yesterday to remind me. "I'll deal with it tonight, Chloe. I promise." Chloe. I knew the name. Chloe Bennett, assistant to James Mitchell, CEO of AITA. I'd seen her once, years ago, when Ethan had taken me to a company holiday party. She'd smiled sweetly back then. Now her voice was tight, almost jealous. You told me it was over with her. Chloe's tone sharpened. I'm not risking my career for this mess, Ethan. If she even hints about what really happened, she won't. His voice carried an arrogance I'd never heard before. She took the fall willingly. I've got insurance. A recording where she confesses. Even if she tries something, it's her word against mine. Who's going to believe an ex-con over a senior manager at AITA? A cold wave rippled through me, starting at my scalp and running all the way down my spine. He recorded me that night when I was sobbing, shaking, ready to ruin my own life to save his. He'd been recording me. My stomach twisted so hard I had to press my hand against the wall just to stay upright. Chloe sighed. You can't keep her around, Ethan. What if she shows up at AITA? What if she talks to James? You promised me a clean slate. I said I'd handle it. Ethan's voice grew softer, coaxing, the way he used to sound with me. I'll meet her tomorrow, give her some money, ask her to move on with her life. She's smart enough to take it. And if she doesn't, she will. She has nothing. No career, no family, no child. His voice dipped lower, almost mocking. She lost that too, remember? I slapped my hand over my mouth to stop the sound that threatened to escape. Whether it was a sob or a scream, I couldn't tell. He knew. He'd known about the pregnancy I lost in that cold, gray cell alone, terrified, and he was using it as part of his justification to discard me like trash. Chloe's heels clicked on the floor as she walked closer to him. Sometimes I think this is karma, you know. You hit a woman with a child and now… Don't start, he cut her off sharply. That was an accident. I told you she came out of nowhere. You were drunk. It doesn't matter now. The one person who could put me behind bars already took the blame. She's the reason I'm standing here with you instead of rotting in a cell. You should be thanking her. Thanking her. Chloe scoffed. She's a liability, Ethan. Finish it. The room went quiet except for the faint hum of music. Then I heard the sound of kiss. It wasn't soft or tender. It was hungry, urgent. I staggered back, my shoulder bumping the doorframe hard enough to make it creak. My pulse roared in my ears. For 2 years, I'd carried the weight of his freedom like a brand on my skin, telling myself it was worth it because he loved me, because we had a future, because sacrifices mean something when love is real. But there was no love here, just ambition and betrayal. I stumbled out, pulling the door closed as quietly as I could. My feet carried me down the hallway, down the stairs, and out into the street before my brain caught up. I sat on a cold metal bench near the parking lot, hands trembling so hard I had to curl them into fists. Madeline. Megan's voice came from somewhere to my left. I hadn't even noticed she'd parked the car and followed me. She crouched down in front of me, eyes scanning my face. You saw something, didn't you? I couldn't speak. I just nodded, tears blurring everything around me. Megan sank beside me and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. It's okay, let out. I buried my face in my hands and cried, really cried for the first time in 2 years. Not just for the betrayal, but for every moment of silence I'd endured behind bars. Every sacrifice I'd convinced myself was worth it. Ethan Clark had taken my freedom, my career, my child, and he hadn't even waited for me to step outside those prison gates before discarding me. But as the sobs racked through me, another feeling burned hotter than the pain, resolve. I couldn't undo the past, but I could decide what came next. And it wouldn't be silence. Not anymore. I don't remember how long I sat on that bench, my face buried in my hands while Megan rubbed slow circles on my back. But at some point, the tears stopped. What replaced them wasn't numbness, it was clarity. Ethan had taken my future once. He wasn't going to take the rest of my life. When I finally spoke, my voice surprised me. I'm not running away. Megan blinked. Maddie, you don't have to prove anything to him. Just start over somewhere else. I shook my head. No, If I run, he wins. I need to take back my name, my life. She hesitated, then nodded, her eyes softening. Okay, then we do it your way. That night, we sat in her apartment, eating cheap takeout while she scrolled through job listings on her laptop. The word law kept glaring back at me from every search result like a door slammed in my face. My record wasn't going to let me practice. Not yet. Maybe not ever. So I started at the bottom. Here's one, Megan said finally. Custodian position. AITA. The name hit like a physical blow. AITA. James Mitchell's company. Yeah. She frowned. Isn't that where Ethan works? I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. Of all places, but then maybe it was fate. Send me the link. Megan bit her lip, but complied. You sure about this? No, I admitted. But it feels like the only way to face all of it. Him. What I did. What I lost. The next morning, I stood at AITA's glass entrance, a plain gray uniform folded over my arm. No one paid me any mind as I signed the paperwork and was handed my cleaning supplies. It felt strange being invisible, but also freeing. I wasn't here to impress anyone. I was here to observe, to understand, and maybe, just maybe, to find a way to tell the truth without losing myself again. My supervisor was a kind woman named Natalia, a middle-aged brunette with tired eyes and an easy smile. Third and fourth floors, she said, handing me keys. Take your time. Nobody notices us until something's wrong. I smiled faintly. Story of my life. That afternoon, while cleaning a hallway lined with tall windows, I heard a small voice behind me. You're new. I turned, startled, and saw a girl, maybe 12, hugging a backpack almost as big as she was. Her hair was honey blonde, braided neatly, and her eyes were gray, wide and watchful. Yeah, I said gently. First day. I'm Madeline. She tilted her head. I'm Olivia. My dad runs this place. James Mitchell's daughter. My chest tightened, memories flashing. The flashing lights of that night, the little girl crying by the roadside. Could it be? You visit often? I asked softly. She nodded. After school. Dad says I shouldn't, but I like being here. It's quiet. I knelt slightly so we were eye level. I like quiet too. Something flickered in her gaze. Recognition? Curiosity? I couldn't tell. But then she smiled, shy and quick, before glancing at my mop. Is it boring? Cleaning. I shook my head. Not really. It gives you time to think. About what? About starting over, I said, surprising myself with the honesty in my voice. Her expression softened. That's nice. Before I could say more, a sharp voice echoed down the hall. Olivia, there you are. A woman in a tailored suit and impossibly high heels appeared. Chloe Bennett. Her eyes landed on me, narrowing slightly. You're? New, I said calmly, meeting her gaze. Just doing my job. Good. Then don't distract the employees' children. She turned to Olivia, her voice softening. Come on, sweetie, your dad's waiting. Olivia hesitated, then looked back at me. See you around? Yeah, I whispered. See you around. That night, lying on Megan's couch, I replayed that moment. Olivia's gray eyes had haunted me. She had been there that night. I was sure of it now. She'd seen who was driving. And yet, no one believed her because she was just a child. I clenched my fists. That little girl lost her mother. And the man responsible built a career on top of that lie with my help. Something inside me hardened. This wasn't about Ethan anymore. It wasn't even about me. It was about truth for Olivia, for her father, for the woman who died, and for the child I'd never hold. The past had stolen enough from me. I was done letting it decide my future. The following days at AITA blurred together. I scrubbed floors, emptied trash bins, and wiped down glass walls that reflected a version of me I was still getting used to. No longer a lawyer with polished heels, just a woman in gray coveralls. And yet, Every day I felt more certain I was exactly where I needed to be. Ethan avoided me like the plague. The first time our eyes met across the lobby, he froze, then ducked into an elevator without a word. His fear gave me a grim sense of power I hadn't felt in years. He knew I wasn't going to disappear quietly. 3 days later, he cornered me in the staff parking lot. "Maddie, we need to talk." I set down my mop bucket, folding my arms. "About what?" "How you sold me out. How you and Chloe celebrated while I rotted in a cell." His jaw clenched. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You begged me to save your career." "I did. I lost everything. And you moved on." My voice trembled, but not from fear. "Don't worry, Ethan. I'm not here for you. I'm here for the truth." He glanced around nervously. "Look, I can make this right. I can give you money, help you get out of this city. Just don't dig into the past." I stared at him, incredulous. "Money? That's what my life is worth to you." His expression hardened. "You don't have proof. And even if you talk, no one will believe you." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Maybe not yet. But I'm not the same woman you manipulated 2 years ago. I'm not afraid of you anymore." That evening, James Mitchell found me cleaning the executive corridor. I stiffened when his eyes landed on me. Those same gray eyes Olivia had inherited. "You're new," he said, his voice calm but curious. "Housekeeping?" "Yes, sir." My voice was steady, though my heart thudded in my ears. He studied me for a long moment, and I could see recognition dawn. "We've met before, haven't we?" I swallowed. "Yes, sir. 2 years ago in court." His eyes sharpened. "You were the one who confessed." I set the cleaning rag down, turning to face him fully. "Yes, ent elite." Silence stretched between us. Finally, James spoke, his tone like a blade. "Explain." So I did. I told him everything about Ethan's drunken call, the plea he whispered while I was still shaking from sleep, the way I'd walked into that police station and handed them my future. And then I told him about the baby I lost in prison and how Ethan hadn't even known or cared. James leaned against the wall, his jaw tight. "Do you have any proof? Anything besides your word?" No, my voice cracked, but I didn't look away. "Only the truth. And your daughter." His eyes darkened. "Olivia." "She was there that night. She saw who was driving. But no one listened to her because she was 10 and in shock." He raked a hand through his hair, his face pale. "God, she did say something, but the detective told me kids often get confused in traumatic events." "She wasn't confused." My voice softened. "She's brave, James. She knows the truth. And so do you deep down." He exhaled slowly, looking like a man torn in two. "You realize what you're asking? If you're lying, I'm not." My voice was steady now. "I don't want revenge, Mr. Mitchell. I want justice. For your wife. For Olivia. For the child I never got to hold." For a long moment, James didn't speak. Then he straightened, his expression unreadable. "You'll hear from me soon." That night, Megan paced our small kitchen, wringing her hands. "You told him everything? Are you insane?" "He deserved the truth," I said, sipping cold coffee. "He deserves to know who's been working for him all this time. And if he fires you, if he calls the cops, you still have that recorded confession hanging over your head, Maddie." "I know." I set the mug down, my hands trembling. "But I'm done hiding. If I go back to jail for telling the truth, then so be it. At least I'll know I finally chose myself instead of him." Megan stopped pacing, staring at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Then she nodded. "Okay, then we do this together." The next morning, James walked into the break room while I was wiping down tables. "Madeline, walk with me." We stepped into an empty office, where he closed the door behind us. I checked Ethan's file. There are gaps, strange ones. And I pulled the accident report. Something's wrong. I held my breath. What do you want to do? James's jaw flexed. I'm reopening this, quietly, until I know for sure. He paused, eyes softening slightly. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry. You shouldn't have carried this alone. The words pierced something inside me, loosening a knot I hadn't even realized I was holding. For the first time in 2 years, I felt like someone believed me. The following week felt like walking a tightrope over fire. James kept his word, quietly launching an internal review of everything related to Ethan Clark. He involved only one other person, Victor Stepanovich, the head of AITA's legal department, a man whose calm, meticulous nature made him seem carved from stone. Victor looked me over during our first private meeting, his eyes thoughtful but kind. James trusts you, he said simply. That's enough for me. Tell me everything. So I did again every painful detail. When I finished, he leaned back, folding his hands. The key will be corroboration. Something physical. Ethan's vehicle, for example. Do you know what happened to it? I remembered Ethan's frantic voice that night, talking about damage to the car. He fixed it immediately. Paid cash. Victor nodded slowly. Then we find the mechanic. 2 days later, we were standing in a cramped garage on the edge of the city, oil and gasoline thick in the air. The mechanic, a broad-shouldered man named Mike, squinted when we mentioned Ethan's name. Yeah, I remember that job, he said, wiping his hands on a rag. Silver sedan. Front end was smashed like it hit a wall or a person. He paid double to get it done fast. Told me not to file an insurance claim. Victor exchanged a glance with me. Would you be willing to make a statement? Mike hesitated, chewing his lip. If it means telling the truth, yeah. But I don't want trouble. You won't be alone, I said softly. You're helping a little girl who lost her mother. He studied me, then nodded. All right, I'll do it. That night, leaving the garage, I felt a strange weight lift. For the first time, the truth felt within reach. But my relief was short-lived. As Victor and I pulled onto the main road, headlights flared behind us. Too close, too fast. Do you know that car? I asked, glancing in the mirror. Victor frowned. No, but it's been there since we left the lot. The vehicle, a black SUV, matched every move we made. When Victor turned right, it turned. When he slowed, it slowed. My stomach tightened. They're following us, I whispered. Victor's grip on the steering wheel tightened. Hold on. He made a sudden left, cutting through a side street, but the SUV stayed on our tail. Who would? I stopped mid-sentence. Of course I knew who. Ethan. Or Chloe. The SUV suddenly accelerated, closing the gap. Victor cursed under his breath, then swerved hard into a crowded parking area near a grocery store. Get out. Blend in with the crowd. I'll loop around. I hesitated. Victor. Go, Madeline. Now. I bolted, weaving through shoppers, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. I ducked behind a row of parked cars and crouched, watching as the SUV prowled past before finally peeling away. Victor returned 10 minutes later, pale but steady. You all right? Yeah, my legs trembled. But they know. They know we're looking. The next day at AITA, I found my locker slightly ajar. Nothing was missing, but everything inside had been disturbed. Uniform folded wrong. Shoes turned over. A warning, subtle but clear. That evening, Megan threw her hands up when I told her, Maddie, this is getting dangerous. You can't keep doing this. I'm not stopping, I said, voice firm even as fear gnawed at me. They tried to scare me before. It won't work this time. She hugged me, gripping my shoulders tight. Then, at least promise me one thing. Don't do it alone. 2 days later, James called me into his office. We're moving forward. Victor got Mike's statement, and Olivia remembered something. My heart skipped. What? She said she saw a man's hands on the wheel. Big hands with a silver watch. You didn't have one, did you? I shook my head. Ethan had one. Always wore it. James exhaled slowly. It's not perfect, but with the mechanic, it's enough to open a formal review. I've already contacted a state investigator I trust. I stared at him, stunned. You believe me? He looked straight into my eyes. I believe the truth matters, and I believe you're telling it. For the first time since I walked out of prison, I felt my knees go weak, not from fear but from relief. Someone finally saw me, not as an ex-convict, but as a woman who had been wronged and was fighting to make it right. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Ethan wouldn't just sit back and watch everything unravel. He'd fight dirty like always. And when cornered, men like him became dangerous. For 3 days, the air around Alta felt charged, like the quiet before a storm. Ethan hadn't spoken to me since the parking lot incident, but I could feel his presence like a shadow at the edge of every hallway. Chloe avoided eye contact altogether, her polished heels clicking nervously across the marble floors. Everyone knew something was happening, even if they couldn't name it. Then, one evening as I left work, Ethan was waiting by the entrance. His posture was stiff, his eyes darting between me and the street. "We need to talk," he said through clenched teeth. I tightened my grip on my bag. "I don't have anything to say to you." "Madeline, please." His voice wavered. I had never heard Ethan Clark beg before, not like this. I hesitated, then nodded toward the cafe across the street. 5 minutes. That's all. The cafe was warm and smelled like cinnamon, but it did nothing to ease the cold knot in my stomach. Ethan sat across from me, his hands restless on the table. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. I stared at him. "Because the truth matters. You killed a woman, Ethan. You destroyed her family, and you let me take the fall for it." He flinched but tried to mask it with a smirk. "You volunteered. You said you loved me. Don't rewrite history now. I lost our baby in prison." My voice cracked, and for the first time his eyes flickered. "Did you know that? I carried your child into a cell and left without it." He opened his mouth, then closed it again, jaw tightening. "I didn't ask you to. No, you just recorded me. You manipulated me. You made me believe this would save us." His composure cracked. "You think you can take me down? Who's gonna believe you? A felon, a janitor against me? Against Chloe? Against the company? You'd be surprised who believes me." I leaned forward. "James Mitchell knows. So does Victor Stepanovich. And Olivia." I paused, letting his name hang heavy. "She remembers who was behind the wheel." He went pale. "You stay out of this," he hissed, leaning in so close I could smell the alcohol on his breath. "Take the money, leave the city, and forget about Olivia." I shook my head. "No, later that night, James called me." His voice was tight. "I've reviewed everything. Tomorrow morning, we confront him together. No more shadows." But Ethan didn't wait for morning. The next day, I met James at a quiet restaurant near the office to go over final details for the investigator. It was supposed to be a simple breakfast meeting. I was halfway through my coffee when I saw him, Ethan, standing at the door, his eyes wild, one hand tucked awkwardly in his jacket pocket. "Stay calm," James murmured, already reaching for his phone. Ethan's voice rang out, sharp and frantic. "You think you can ruin me, Madeline? After everything I sacrificed for us." I stood, hands trembling but steady in my voice. "You didn't sacrifice anything, Ethan. You sacrificed me." "Shut up." His face twisted, and then I saw it, the glint of a knife in his hand. Time slowed. James lunged forward, grabbing Ethan's wrist. The knife clattered onto the tiled floor, and a scream tore through the cafe as people ducked under tables. I grabbed a water carafe from the counter and swung it with all my strength, smashing it against Ethan's shoulder. He roared, twisting free and shoving James hard into a table. I saw blood. James's arm sliced open. Adrenaline surged through me. I threw myself at Ethan, tackling him to the ground, my hand scrabbling for the knife. "Help!" I shouted. "Call the police!" Two men from the kitchen rushed out, pinning Ethan's arms, while James, pale but upright, kicked the knife away. Sirens wailed in the distance. Ethan thrashed, his voice breaking. "You'll regret this, Maddie. You think they'll believe you? You're nothing without me." I knelt there, chest heaving, staring into the eyes of the man I once thought I loved. There was nothing there but rage and desperation. And in that moment, I felt nothing for him. Not anger, not love, not even hatred. Just emptiness and freedom. The police stormed in, cuffing him and reading his rights. As they hauled him to his feet, his eyes locked on mine. "You did this," he spat. "Yes," I said quietly. "I did." Outside, paramedics treated James's arm while I sat on the curb, shaking. He looked over at me and managed a faint smile. "You saved my life." I shook my head. "No, I just saved the truth." He reached over, placing a blood-streaked hand on mine. "This isn't over, but we're going to finish it. Together." For the first time in 2 years, I felt the weight on my shoulders begin to lift. Ethan Clark's lies were crumbling, and with them, the cage I'd carried inside me. By the time the trial began, the whole city knew Ethan Clark's name, not as a rising corporate star, but as the man who'd let someone he claimed to love take the fall for his crime. The prosecutors moved fast once the new evidence came in. Mike's sworn statement about the rushed car repairs, Olivia's testimony recalling the silver watch on the driver's wrist, and finally Ethan's own threats caught on the cafe's security cameras. It was enough to crack the facade he had built so carefully. I sat in the courtroom, my palms damp as Ethan was led to the stand in cuffs. His eyes darted toward me, full of the same fury I'd seen in the cafe that day, but it no longer touched me. That man didn't own a piece of me anymore. Olivia testified with quiet courage, her small voice carrying so much truth it silenced the entire room. James sat beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. I could see his grief mixing with pride, the ache of a father who'd finally listened to his daughter and believed her. When it was my turn, I told everything, again, this time to a room full of strangers and a judge who listened closely. My voice shook at first, but then I thought of the woman who'd lost her life, of the unborn child I'd lost, and of all the women I'd met in prison who had carried their own heavy stories. My voice steadied. I ended my testimony simply. I lied because I thought love meant sacrifice. I was wrong. Love built on lies isn't love, it's a cage. And I won't live in one anymore. The jury didn't take long. Guilty. Ethan was sentenced to 10 years in prison for vehicular homicide, obstruction of justice, and attempted assault with a deadly weapon. Chloe Bennett, his so-called clean slate, received 2 years probation for tampering with company records in an attempt to shield him. The day the sentence came down, James met me on the courthouse steps. His suit jacket hung loose, as if he'd finally let go of a weight he'd been carrying since his wife's death. "Madeline," he said softly, "you gave my daughter her voice back, and you gave me something I thought I'd lost. Faith in people." I smiled, tears welling in my eyes. "You believed me when no one else would. That saved me too." He hesitated, then reached into his briefcase. "I have something for you." It was an official document, a full exoneration. I froze, staring at the paper as if it might vanish. "How?" "Victor fought like hell and the DA agreed. You're no longer a convicted felon. Your record is clean." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Then I hugged him, clinging to the man who had started this whole chain of healing simply by listening. "Thank you," I whispered. Life didn't magically become perfect after that. Healing never works like that. It's slow, messy, full of setbacks and tiny victories. But I built a life. James offered me a job in AITA's legal department, not as a favor, but because he'd read my casework in prison and knew I still had the mind for it. At first, I hesitated. I worried about being the woman who went to jail for a man. But then I thought about the women still serving time, women who might never get their voices heard. I accepted the job. Months passed. My days were filled with legal briefs instead of mop buckets, case files instead of handcuffs. I started volunteering at a women's reentry program on weekends, sharing my story to remind others that one mistake or one manipulative partner didn't have to define their entire lives. Olivia would stop by my office sometimes after school. She'd lean against the doorway, clutching a sketchbook, and ask about college or internships or how to tell her dad she wanted to major in art instead of business. She called me her friend. Sometimes when I looked at her, I imagined the child I'd lost, and for the first time, it didn't feel like an open wound, but like a scar I'd finally learned to live with. On the 1-year anniversary of the verdict, we launched the Second Chance Initiative, a program James and I had built together to help women leaving prison find housing, legal support, and jobs. At the launch event, standing at the podium in front of reporters and community leaders, I felt a flicker of nervousness. Then I saw Olivia in the front row, beaming, James beside her, and Megan waving from the back. I took a deep breath. A year ago, I walked out of prison thinking my life was over. I thought love had destroyed me. But what I didn't know was that telling the truth, no matter how painful, can build something new. This program is about that second chance, not just for people like me, but for everyone who believes it's too late to start over. It's never too late. The applause rolled over me like a warm tide. I stepped down, and Olivia ran up to hug me. "You did it," she whispered. "No," I said, smiling through tears. "We did." Later, James joined me on the terrace overlooking the city. The sunset painted the sky orange and pink, like a promise of better days. "You know," he said quietly, "when you first told me the truth, I wanted to fire you. I thought you were there to hurt my family." I nodded. "I wouldn't have blamed you. But you didn't hurt us. You healed us." His voice softened. "And you healed yourself too, didn't you?" I looked out at the skyline, feeling the wind in my hair. "Yeah, I think I did." We stood in silence for a moment. For the first time in years, I felt at peace, not because life was perfect, but because I was finally living it on my own terms. Ethan Clark had taken 2 years from me, but he hadn't taken me. That part was mine, and I was never giving it away again. And as the last light of day faded, I thought about something my cellmate once told me during a night when hope seemed impossible. The bars only win if you stop believing in tomorrow. Tomorrow had finally come, and it was beautiful,